All right, we'll call our, hang on a second, special meeting to order. Item number 2, approve the agenda. Noting that we have no minutes to review and we have no public hearing.
Move to approve.
All in favor?
I'll second.
Oh, sorry, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we can move right forward to new business.
Thank you. Madam Chair, members of the Commission, tonight we are reviewing Lakeview Industries' final plat. So a bit of an update of where we are in the process. The Planning Commission reviewed the concept plan in July, Council shortly after in August. The Planning Commission then reviewed preliminary plat and rezoning at the August 30th meeting, and then it probably seems like we halted a little bit. So this meeting is to fill you in a little bit and bring back the final plat. So tonight we are considering the final plat application for Lakeview Industries. The City Council, if favorable tonight, will be holding a special meeting tomorrow morning, November 9th at 8:30 here at Church by the River. So taking us back a little bit to get our bearings, the project location, the Lakeview site is just north of Fleet Farm, so north of Highway 212. It is northeast of pretty much the city of Carver, so it's the blip of Carver city limits that is north of 212, directly adjacent to Mills Fleet Farm. This property was annexed in with the Mills project, so it has been in city limits since 2011. And if you recall at the rezoning request, when a property is annexed into the city, the default, it goes to agriculture until a project is identified. So at your August 30th meeting, you reviewed the rezoning request from agriculture to industrial. The City Council reviewed that request on Monday, November 5th, and approved the rezoning from industrial to agriculture. So since the last time we saw this project together on August 30th, we've received some updated renderings. So here's an idea of what the Lakeview building will look like. So this would be if you were essentially standing directly at the Mills Fleet Farms site looking towards Jonathan Carver Parkway. So a good idea of what the building will look like. It has some interesting architectural features to give it a more diverse feel, that it's not just one straight wall that can sometimes feel a little more industrial than this project does. So talking a little bit about that pause we took from August to this point where the Planning Commission is reviewing the final plat. At the August 30th meeting, we had the public hearing and we heard lots of feedback, and it caused staff to pause a little bit and to think about the project in a different way. At that point, we decided to move forward with a government discretionary environmental assessment worksheet. So what an environmental assessment worksheet does is it looks at the holistic idea of a project. So it takes into account several different factors, including pollution, noise, dust, how they get rid of solid waste, pretty much any environmental concern that a project might have. The EAW asks you to step back and to look at it and think about it, and also start to prepare mitigation. So if something comes out in the EAW that is not favorable, you do either need to be able to mitigate it or identify if there is another step needed, which is the environmental impact statement. So the EAW allowed us to get a really good look at the project and to see what it would mean not only at construction but as it was operating. How do they take some of the solid waste out? What does it do for light pollution? What does that sound like? So at that time, the city hired Wenck, which is a consultant engineering and planning firm. So these are actually Wenck slides that were presented to the City Council on November 5th. So they gave a brief overview of the EAW process. So again, it was for the Lakeview Industries project. They are currently operating in the city of Chaska in 2 locations. Anticipated, if opening in the city of Carver, it will be 95 new employees to start, 120 probably within the first 5 years. And the new site would be on 42.5 acres in Carver, just north of the Fleet Farm. And the move would consolidate the operations, which is currently in 2 facilities, to 1. And the first construction phase is right at that 154,000 square feet that we saw at the time of preliminary plat. So the environmental review process is guided by Chapter 4410 of state statute. It's either driven by the project developer or the city that submits the environmental assessment worksheet. In this case, it was the city. So thinking through, back in July is when the project started, the comment period for the EAW is required to be 30 days. So it was essentially the month of October. So at that point, there's an entire list in the environmental assessment worksheet guide that you need to send it to. I think it's roughly 16 agencies, both at state and federal level. And it also needs to be sent to anyone who has land use jurisdiction over the property. So Carver County Planning, the Watershed District, Transportation, etc. So based on everything that came forward in the EAW and the comments that were received, so in that 30-day comment period, 5 comment letters were received, 2 from a resident, 1 from the MPCA, 1 from MnDOT, and 1 from Carver County. So through those comments, we were able to determine that the environmental assessment worksheet was adequate, and we were able to address all questions, concerns, and comments through mitigation that Lakeview currently was already doing. So none of the comments came back and made us think, like, wow, we hadn't thought about that, which was a cool step that, number one, people chose to comment, and number two, it was pretty easy to draw the line between the practices that Lakeview is doing to the EAW. So I learned a lot about like how they removed the rags from their facility, which was a concern, that they had a toxic substance on them. So we have a lot more clarity on some of that information now. So this is not something that the Planning Commission needs to think about at all. The council did approve the EAW, the findings of fact, conclusion, and record decision, but I thought it was pertinent information just because we were working so closely on this project, and it probably has felt like it's taken a little bit for it to come back. So the EAW was kind of a long process. That 30-day comment period can drag out a little bit, so hence why you haven't seen it since your August 30th meeting. So here is the actual outline of when everything needed to go out. So it started, September was spent mostly drafting the EAW. It went out on the 27th. Something else that's really cool, I think, about the EAW is that it's required to be published in several places. So if someone is interested in environmental issues, they probably saw it. So it goes to the Environmental Quality Board, which does a weekly publication called The Monitor. It was also published as a press release in the Chaska Herald. So at the November 5th meeting, the record of decision was prepared, and the council did decide to move forward, saying that the EAW was adequate and no EIS or environmental impact statement was required. So you don't need to think about any of that. I just think it's a helpful caveat for the project, and I think gives us a really good look about what Lakeview is, how they operate, and how they will operate in the city of Carver. So moving back to the final plat review, the final plat that's included in the packet is strictly for Block 1, Lot 1. So the red line, the dash line, is pretty close to where that first property line is going to be. Anything north of that is not currently considered for development. Should they choose to develop the second property, they would need to come back in for preliminary plat and final plat. So as we think through this, it's just Lot 1, Block 1, nothing north. Here's an easier, I think, picture to digest probably, showing the general site layout for Lakeview Industries. Commerce Drive is currently not a street, but it will be a city-funded project through a deed grant that we received and TIF dollars that will be used for the project. So Commerce Drive will be constructed in conjunction with this project, which will give Lakeview great access. Thinking about Levi Griffin Road, it is a collector in the city of Carver, so we wanted to make sure that truck traffic had an easy way to get into the site and circulate without causing a lot of slowdowns and stopping on Levi Griffin Road. So Commerce Drive will be constructed. We'll give them really good traffic flow around the site. So again, the final plat, just Lot 1, Block 1. Everything else was preserved in Outlot A. Something that we also thought about at a staff level and had Bolton and Menk prepare is an elevation view of what current residents will see in conjunction with the Lakeview Industries site. So we heard from several people on Creek Ridge Lane being concerned about what this would do to their property specifically, what it would do to sight lines, how it would impact them directly. So this is an elevation view of Creek Ridge Lane, which you see furthest on the left, right, depending on how you're looking at it. And their elevation. So this is an elevation thinking about feet. So Creek Ridge Lane sits significantly lower than the Lakeview parcel, and based on this rendering that was completed with LiDAR data, it's not anticipated that residents on Creek Ridge Lane will actually see the Lakeview project when it's fully constructed. So again, not something that you necessarily need to think about at a planning commission level, but I think helpful, and a cool caveat that is, I think, would have been helpful probably a couple steps ago, but I'm happy that we have it at this point. So more updated renderings of what the building will look like. You've seen the top one. The middle will be if you're traveling west on Levi Griffin Road. So you'll see the corner is highlighted with some additional glass. So if you think about the types of office users that are going to be in this building, they'll enter likely where there's more of the highlighted section of glass. That's where visitors will also enter. And then the third is the rear, which shows the truck docks. Thinking about landscaping for the project, if you've been up to Fleet Farm recently and are thinking about the other side of the street, there are some trees that have been planted with the Levi Griffin project. So those are anticipated to stay. If during construction one of them does not make it, they will be replaced. And there are also a number of significant plantings that are around the foundation of Lakeview Industries. So thinking about an industrial user, the foundations can often get really long because it's generally a flat building. So adding some foundation level plantings will break it up, make it look more of that commercial office feel that we're looking for in that corridor. So the landscaping around the foundation is pretty robust. There are also several plantings throughout the proposed parking lot. Oh, that should say final plat. The final plat is consistent with the preliminary plat that you reviewed at your August 30th meeting. There have been no major changes in the time that between August 30th and today. We've been working through some small engineering comments, but again, it was largely the EAW process that has caused this lag. So at this point, I will open it up for questions, comments. Let me know if you need me to go back in slides at all.
All right.
Any questions? Any discussion?
I don't have any questions. I appreciate knowing more about the environmental worksheet and just that it's adequate. I didn't really know how to approach it. Like, okay, am I looking for something to be wrong?
Right.
So it's just kind of nice that all that due diligence has been done and it's considered accurate. Or, I'm sorry, adequate.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would concur. I mean,
Adequate.
it was interesting to read through the assessment and some
Yes.
of the details that they went into about, what is going to be inside the building versus outside the building, what activities were going to take place. It seemed like a really good detailed review, if you will, and even the water runoff and things like that I know that we review as part of any city project. But just seeing those additional details, I think, brought some extra confidence about this project.
Good.
Madam Chair, if I may, I concur. I don't have any questions or anything, but I couldn't have said it better myself. But I do have a comment on the resident, Ms. Conan's comment as she spoke to the 350 feet requirement. And I know that's something that as Planning Commission and as Council, that's something that we deal with regularly. So if I could, I'd just like to say a couple words on that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think it's important, and I think, we had a good turnout for the public hearing and a lot of public comment. And then in her writings to us on this with the 350-foot requirement saying, why didn't we go farther out? Why didn't we feel that other people in the neighborhood felt impacted by this? And I think it's an opportunity for us to educate our public. It's important. We want people to be engaged. We want people to, we want to hear their input and take these things into consideration, but it's also kind of a plea to them to please everyone. This is important, not just when it affects you in that 350 foot, but please follow the Planning Commission and the City Council and subscribe to the agendas so you're informed and can come and make input timely. And I know our city staff has done a great job. We strive to be open and transparent and make sure that that the information is getting out there, and when we draw those boundaries, that it's a good representation of who's impacted within that. But the challenge that we have that the city staff have is we want to make sure that we're treating everybody equally. And that 350 feet notification boundary allows us not only to be consistent with the statute, but consistent from project to project. And so I think it's important that people understand that. And when we open that up to subjectivity and we leave that open to interpretation, it really creates a level of scrutiny for the city and creates, frankly, some liability for the city if we go beyond that. So it's one of those things that I thought it just resonated with me, and I thought it was important to note that it's not that we don't want to inform people, it's not that we don't want to hear people's input, it's not that because we think the street behind that or a different neighborhood might not be as impacted. We're trying to make sure that we're following statute, we're following our city code, and we're trying to treat everybody equally. So I'll step off my soapbox now, but just wanted to speak to that, so thank you.
Yep, you're welcome. I guess the only question I really have in reading the packet and going through the EAW and then the letter, again, I agree with the public hearing. We did have a lot of comments and discussion, and I think it was a learning situation for everybody as far as the process goes and really what we're focused on at each meeting. I just wanted to ask, after the follow-up responses were emailed back, because I think the date on that is the 27th of October.
That sounds right.
We're at the 23rd, so a couple of weeks ago. Has there been any other further communication or questions?
No, there has not been.
Okay,
And part
after
of
the EAW came back in?
Correct, yes. And part of the EAW process, kind of closing it out, anyone who comments is sent the full EAW and the findings of fact. So it not only went on our city website as part of the packet, but it also is sent to anyone who comments directly.
Okay, I think that's helpful to hear too. I mean, obviously, based off of the robust public hearing, I mean, the assumption would be that those folks are engaged in following along with the process now and have, ongoing opportunity to keep communicating and participating in that,
Right.
to give their feedback. So I think that's great. Thank you. Any further discussion? Okay.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve Lakeville's final plat as presented.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carried. Okay, moving on to communications. Besides a big congratulations going to two current folks here, Courtney and Lori.
Well, that was the only thing that I was going to bring up. Congratulations to Commissioner Sayre for winning the council race in the vote tally. So looking forward to working with you.
Thank you.
Obviously, it's a bittersweet thing for us, but okay. Okay. We won't vote on it up here, okay?
I assume we'll be recruiting for another alternate member then?
Yes.
Okay.
We also just looked right before the meeting, and there are a couple terms that are up in March of 2019, so I'll let you know if you're up and how we can move through that process together as well.
Are we having a planning commission meeting in November? Other than
We
this
are,
one?
yes.
Oh, okay, when is it?
The 15th. I will say the packet is going to look really beefy and scary, but I don't want you to be too afraid of it. There's 5 public hearings on the agenda.
5.
5. You've seen 3 of them already, so it's the floodplain ordinance that you've already reviewed, and then the 2 ordinance amendments that are required to collect fees for the fee schedule. The other 2 are related to Hawthorne Ridge, which is Ellen Redmond's property, the D.R. Horton project, and Carver Ridge, which is the 70-unit apartment for seniors. So it's 3 public hearings, it's those 3 ordinances, so 2 land use, 3 ordinances. I trust you will do a fantastic job. Don't let it feel too scary. The packet will be going out tomorrow.
Jim, this is usually the plug for the gazebo event coming up. All right, I know we're getting together before then.
We're having a meeting next Wednesday, the 14th. So if anybody's interested in helping out or offering anything for the event next Wednesday at Carver Place, 7 o'clock.
And when you say "we," you mean Lions?
Actually, Carver on the Minnesota is a
Okay.
pusher. but
Well, I'm glad
think
I
a lot-
asked.
A lot of the people that will be helping will be
Okay.
from the Lions. I happen to be from both, so
That's why you say we.
we.
Great.
Motion to adjourn?
I'll second that.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Great, thank you.
Thank you for the special meeting. I appreciate